What happens when doubt meets undeniable truth, when whispers become reality and a legend walks through the door? This is the story of one Marine who turned skepticism into silence and chaos into survival. The forward operating base felt like it was holding its breath. For weeks, the mountains surrounding them had become a graveyard for hope. Patrols vanished into valleys. Ambushes materialized from nowhere. When Marines came back, they came back changed, or they didn't come back at all. Inside the operations tent, tension hung thick as smoke. Maps sprawled across tables. Radio chatter crackled in the background. And then the door opened. She wasn't what anyone expected. Small frame, quiet entrance. Nothing about her screamed warrior or hero. She was just another Marine walking into a room full of men who'd seen everything. Or so they thought. The Navy SEALs leaned back, smirking behind half-hidden grins. Whispers rippled through the group like water finding cracks. That's supposed to be her? The one everyone's talking about. Skepticism dripped from every word. To them, she was just another name attached to exaggerated stories Staley's told to make sense of impossible situations. At the far end stood General Marcus Steele. 3 decades of service carved into his face. A chest full of ribbons that told stories of battles won and men commanded. He'd built his career on facts, not fairy tales. And the Marine standing before him looked like anything but a miracle. Steele had heard the rumors, of course. Every John ad. Stories filtering back from the field about someone who moved through danger like water through stone. Someone who turned hopeless fights into victories. Someone they called by a name that made veteran Marines lower their voices. But still didn't believe in ghosts. He believed in discipline, training, and cold hard results. The room buzzed with restless energy, laughter mixed with doubt. Men exchanged glances that said everything without words. The stories had painted a picture, but the reality standing in front of them didn't match the canvas. Steele's eyes narrowed. He'd spent years learning to read situations the way snipers read wind patterns. And something about this moment unsettled him in ways he couldn't quite name. The atmosphere shifted the instant she entered. Marines who'd been talking suddenly went quiet mid-sentence. Even the SEALs, men who prided themselves on being unshakable, paused just long enough to look. That subtle change told Steele more than any briefing ever could. He pushed back from the table, boots striking the plywood floor hard enough to demand attention. The tent went silent as a held breath. "You?" he barked, his voice carrying the weight of command that had shaped careers and broken spirits. "Step forward." She moved without hesitation. Every eye tracked her path across the tent. She was smaller than most, leaner too, but something in the way she carried herself, shoulders squared, spine straight, eyes unwavering, refused to bend under scrutiny. "Name and unit," Steele demanded, his tone sharp as a blade's edge. "Gunnery Sergeant Elena Therese. First reconnaissance, sir." The answer came crisp and clean, exactly as expected. But Steele wasn't satisfied. He'd heard fragments from the field. Stories of Marines surviving impossible odds. Squads dragged back from the edge of annihilation. One name appearing again and again in reports that were quickly classified and buried. He stepped closer, his shadow falling across her face. His jaw tightened. "Not good enough," he said quietly. But every man in the tent caught the words. "Call sign." The room stopped breathing. Marines exchanged glances. A SEAL shifted in his seat, boots scraping floor. The whispers that had run wild for weeks suddenly collided with this single moment. Everyone knew what was coming. Everyone wanted to hear it, and everyone feared it. Torres didn't blink. Her face remained calm, almost detached, as though she'd lived this exact confrontation in her mind 1,000 times before. She lifted her chin slightly, meeting Steele's stare without a flicker of doubt. Her voice came level and steady, stripped of ego or pride. "Specter Six." The words cut through the air like lightning through darkness. Silence followed, thick, heavy, absolute. Even General Steele said nothing for a long moment. He'd seen the call sign in reports stamped, classified, and buried in secure files. He'd dismissed it as exaggeration, the kind of myth soldiers create to make sense of survival. But now the myth had a face, and eyes that didn't break under pressure. Around the room, Marines shifted uncomfortably. SEALs straightened in their seats. The smirks vanished. The laughter died. All that remained was the weight of 2 words hanging in the air like a challenge answered. Specter Six. Nobody doubted anymore. The sound of her words still echoed when reality settled back into the tent. For a heartbeat, nothing moved. The laughter from moments before had evaporated completely. The seal who'd been loudest earlier now sat upright, hands on his knees, jaw clenched. Across the room, junior officers exchanged uncertain glances. They'd read fragments of after-action reports, the ones never meant to circulate. Reports describing a Marine who disappeared into alleys only to reappear behind enemy lines. Someone who turned chaos into clean victories. But those documents always carried the same label. Unverified. Now, the source of those whispers breathed the same air, and the weight of it pressed down on every man present. Steele's expression hardened further. He'd seen heroes made and broken in single nights. He didn't trust myths, built around flesh and blood. But this call sign had punched through his skepticism because he'd heard it before in classified chatter, in reports delivered behind closed doors, in whispers that made even seasoned men lower their voices. The tent remained still as stone. Marines who'd mocked her quietly minutes earlier now avoided her gaze. No one laughed. No one whispered. Torres stood motionless, her expression calm, neither proud nor defensive. She offered nothing more. She'd spoken her name. That was enough. No wonder they survived. The words spread like sparks on dry grass. Men remembered missions in these mountains when units pinned under fire had somehow clawed back without losing anyone. The stories had seemed exaggerated comfort, tales told in chaos's aftermath. But now those same men realized the center of every story stood right in front of him. Steele's eyes drilled into her, searching for cracks, testing for weakness. He saw none. Behind those eyes burned calm fire, not arrogance, not bravado. Certainty. For the first time in a long career, Steele found himself genuinely unsettled. When he finally spoke, his voice dropped lower but carried farther. I hope, Sergeant, that name isn't just smoke. Torres met his stare without flinching. It isn't, sir. The silence returned, but different this time. Not mocking. Raw respect that can't be demanded, only earned through blood and fire. But respect wasn't enough to save lives. And before the moment could settle, the tent flaps snapped open. A young lieutenant rushed in, pale-faced, clutching papers. He placed them before Steele without a word. Steele scanned the report, his jaw tightening with each line. Then he looked up, eyes narrowing on the room. Recon Bravos, Gondaki announced, voice even but carrying undeniable gravity. Last contact, 20 minutes ago. Outskirts. No communications. No movement. High probability of ambush. Unease rippled through the gathered men. Everyone understood. A silent unit in these mountains wasn't just lost. It was surrounded. Steele's gaze shifted deliberately to Torres. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Sergeant Torres, you're on point. The words dropped like a hammer on steel. SEALs traded quick glances, their earlier mockery replaced with something closer to unease. They'd heard whispers, watched her stand toe-to-toe with the general. But this was different. This was written in blood and dust. Torres didn't hesitate. Yes, sir. She adjusted her rifle strap, stepping forward with calm precision. Around her, boots scraped and weapons clicked as Marines and SEALs fell into formation. Doubt lingered in their eyes, but so did curiosity, bordering on respect. Outside, the night hummed with tension. The convoy moved under red lights, tires crunching gravel, engines kept low. Inside the armored vehicle, Silenza rang. Torres sat near the door, helmet tilted slightly down, eyes closed for a moment of stillness. To anyone watching, it looked like calm. To her, it was calculation mapping patterns of enemy fire, blind spots she'd navigated before, the rhythm of ambushes in these mountains. When they reached the outskirts, Steele's voice crackled through the radio. Specter Six, lead them in. Torres signaled forward. They dismounted, boots hitting dirt, reefless. The alleys yawned open before them, dark and suffocating. The seal nearest her whispered, "Feels like a trap." Torres didn't answer. Her hand went up, signaling out. Her eyes scanned rooftops, shadows, windows that seemed to quiet. She felt it, the shift in air, the weight of eyes watching. "Positions," she said quietly. Voice cutting through comes with steady certainty. And then the night exploded. The first rifle crack. Shattered silence. A Marine went down hard, brothers dragging him behind cover as bullets ricocheted off stone. Then came the storm gunfire from every direction. Rooftops, windows, narrow alleys funneling death toward them. The Marines pressed into dirt, trapped. Smoke and dust filled the air. Comes burst with frantic voices, every rooftop lit with muzzle flashes. But Torres didn't collapse into chaos. She pressed against a shattered wall, breathing even. Eyes sweeping the battlefield like reading a Mapengul's. Blind spots. Timing. There, a damaged wall, half collapsed. Just enough handholds. "Cover me," she ordered. Voice cutting through noise like a blade. No one questioned. They shifted fire, giving her the window. Torres sprinted low, boots slamming broken stone. Then she climbed one hand, then the next, body moving with deliberate precision despite rounds snapping close enough to tear air beside her. She reached the rooftop edge, rolled silently over, came up behind the first sniper team. Her rifle barked once clean. Surgical. The shooter crumpled before turning his head. She didn't linger. She flowed to the next position, silhouette vanishing into shadow, then reappearing like smoke. Each trigger squeeze dropped another methodical, exact. Below, Marines felt pressure shift. Fire that had caged them suddenly faltered. "She's clearing them," a SEAL muttered in disbelief. One by one, rooftops fell silent. Escape routes opened like unlocked doors. Move. Push. Left. A Marine shouted, seizing the moment. The squad surged, dragging wounded, rifles covering gaps that seemed impossible minutes earlier. From above, Torres laid down measured fire, each shot carving a pass. No panic. No wasted bullets. Every round meant freedom. Every round meant life. By the time the last rooftop fell quiet, the convoy remained intact. Every Marine alive, bloodied, shaken, but breathing. Torres climbed back down, boots landing in dust, rifle still warm. She said nothing, slipping back into formation as if she hadn't just shifted the entire fight single-handedly. The SEALs stared, earlier smirks replaced by stunned silence. One spoke under his breath. "That's not rumor, that's real." The convoy rolled back into base under dim floodlights, dust clinging to uniforms, gunpowder smell on skin. Medics rushed forward, but what mattered most, every Marine walked out, breathing. Inside the operations tent, the atmosphere had transformed. SEALs who'd laughed now stood quietly along walls. Marines who doubted moved with stiffness, men standing before something larger than themselves. General Steele waited at the table's head, arms crossed, ribbons gleaming. When Torres entered, the room fell silent. Steele studied her, eyes hard, but no longer skeptical. When he spoke, the entire tent listened. "Specter Six," he said, the call sign rolling with deliberate weight. "You kept every man alive today." He didn't offer speeches, didn't raise his voice. Instead, he gave the smallest nod. From a man like Steele, that meant more than medals or ribbons. It was respect carved from fire, earned in blood. Torres didn't flinch, didn't smile. She simply saluted, crisp and steady. The general returned it, sharp and short. Nothing more needed saying. That night, word spread faster than radio signals. Across the base, Marines whispered the name with new certainty. Specter Six wasn't rumor anymore. She was real. Young recruits carved S6 into helmets, rifle stocks, scraps of paper folded into pockets like talismans. Veterans nodded quietly, passing the story without exaggeration this time. Outside the barracks, Torres sat on sandbag walls beneath the night sky. Stars stretched wide overhead, the Same stars she'd seen 1,000 nights before. She ran a cloth over her rifle, motion slow, almost meditative. She didn't bask in whispers, didn't crave the legend. She only thought of men still alive because of what happened in those alleys. Her voice was low, meant only for herself and the stars. As long as they come home, the name means something. Wind carried her words into darkness. Somewhere in the distance, laughter drifted from barracks windows. Marines alive because of her. Specter 6 wasn't just a call sign anymore. It was a promise kept.